All right, we are back, and you're listening to Wax Crackle Pop. I'm DJ Jim G here on Radio Valencia, and I have in the studio a very special guest. I'm honored, and apparently he is honored to be here, Mr. Jonathan Richman. Hello.
Hi, Jim. Hi, everybody.
That, my friend, when was the last time you heard that song, I'm Waiting for the Man?
It does almost still to me what it did when I heard it. I still listen to it as intently as I did when I was 16 or 17. I hear different things in it now, but that drum part, where did she get the idea for that drum part? That bass line,
Yeah.
those double rhythm guitar parts, that piano playing, that voice.
It's a perfect combination. I mean, would you call it a perfect combination?
No.
Okay. Well, that's what we heard, and I'm sure all of you out there know that's off the first Velvet Underground record, Velvet Underground and Nico. Do you know any backstories with that song in particular, Jonathan? Or, I mean, well, you just...
To get the listeners in the thing, when I was 16 and I heard the Velvet Underground, I had to try, and I never expected to be able to meet them or see them, but I was living outside. I grew up in the suburbs of Boston, and I went wherever I could in Boston when I was 16, just wandered around looking for somehow ways to get into the music scene, and I didn't really know how, but I somehow magically did. I was underage. I shouldn't have been able to get into the clubs where bands like that played, but in a long story, somehow I did. And I got to see the Velvet Underground play many, many times. So I got to see them do that song at this club in Boston of those days many times. And so I got to hear the sound in the room of the way things were then. And I think that your listeners who weren't there then should maybe know this. Music then didn't sound at all the way the groups that try and sound like the way the Velvet Underground sounded then don't sound the way those groups sounded. The Velvet Underground were one of the loudest groups of 1967 or 68 as far as the volume they played at, and you wouldn't hear them today. Every high school band that plays at a street fair outside on the street is louder by far than the loudest bands were then. The equipment that they have now wasn't even invented then, and no one used it like that. You would hear the sound of the amplifiers themselves in the room. People didn't plug things into the PA system unless they were playing at a football stadium. So you heard the sound of these amps, and these amps usually, especially when the Velvet Underground were those early amps, they were playing through Vox Super Beatles, and the sound was colorful and distorted, and it broke up. And people nowadays would say, turn up. They wouldn't even realize that the band was playing now.
Right.
Just because volume has changed so dramatically.
Absolutely.
And it's not just volume, so that actually changed the sound. So you heard all these tone colors. It was a very intimate thing. It was more intimate by far than, we're talking to you from San Francisco, and thinking of a lot of the clubs around here, even the littler ones, where you hear music of, different, you might say, in the vanguard of some sort of social styles. It's not intimate at all compared to as intimate as hearing music was then.
Yeah.
I mean, just to tell you, I would use my little 16-year-old cunning ways to get in to see other acts. I got to see the Doors, but I would just make posters and just go up to the club in the afternoon of the day of the show and just hand make a poster and say, here's a poster I made. Can I? And I worked hard on it. And I'd say, can I get in free? And they would exchange me that, even though I was underage. So the Doors are setting up at about 4 o'clock, and it's just them. People set up their own equipment back then. They maybe had a driver and one guy helping them. So I was this little squirt just hanging around, and the Doors were as close as me and you are now.
Yeah.
No security guards.
Yeah.
Nothing. I mean, there was hardly any road crews back then. There was hardly any You know, the Rolling Stones might have had a security guy. The Beatles would have had him.
Right.
But most people didn't have him.
That was kind of the dawn of like the big, obviously the big,
Just
big
before
groups.
it.
Yeah,
Just before all that stuff started.
the security and the entourage.
Yeah, just before all that.
Right. So the intimacy level was just...
It was hard to... I'm trying to describe it to you, but it's hard.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I'm saying that's sort of... You got to know that to feel the way the music felt. It was not the way music sounds now. Your ears didn't ring after every show back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
People, in fact, were trying to get more volume because they only had 50 and 100-watt PA systems then. And when you saw bands like the Lovin' Spoonful play at a big 5,000-seat theater, the PA system might have been 50 watts. For those who aren't in the music industry and don't put that into the context, the band of every high school kid, when they go down to a music store and their dad buys them an amp, the bass amp will be 200 or 300 watts just for a 15-year-old. And here were people like the biggest groups of the day not playing through that much volume when they were playing at a stadium.
Right. Well, the Beatles' Shea Stadium's a good example of that.
They had to go through the house baseball speakers. They put mics in front of their own things and went through the house baseball, bullhorn speakers.
Right.
And things like that. And the equipment wasn't even there.
Right. Amazing. Well, let's pedal back a little bit. So, you tell me about the first time you heard Lou.
Well, I heard the Velvet Underground. I heard them as part of the group. They had radio stations that played this stuff, and I heard it. I just heard one of the songs with Nico singing, and I was intrigued. And a friend of mine brought over the album, and when I first heard the opening parts of the song Heroin, I went, these people would understand me. This is it. Somehow I have to get close to this.
Wow.
And I had no idea how.
Mm.
I had no idea that I would ever meet them. I had no idea that they would end up playing in Boston so much, which they did.
Was it accidentally that
yes.
Okay.
All accident. I mean, I don't believe in accidents, but as accidentally as any accident happens, yes. It was an unbelievable chain of accidents. About 8 major accidents that had to happen. That would take a long time to explain. But yes, it was 8 major car crash accidents had to happen. They weren't accidents at all. I was magnetically drawn there and I had to be there.
Wow.
And so I was. And so I got to, I was the little squirt that hung around so much, but I would ask these questions and they tolerated me. And so I would watch them rehearse. I'd get there early. I'd watch them rehearse. I'd watch them get sounds. I'd watch them work out songs. But they knew I had to be there. They knew. As obnoxious as I was, that it was life and death. They could see. They could see in my eyes that this was life and death for this little high school squirt. So they got it.
They realized your persistence.
They realized that I had. Yeah, they got it.
So you went from...
I was nothing if not tenacious.
Right. Eager.
Yeah.
So you heard the first record through a friend out on the radio a little bit.
On the radio and to a friend, yeah. He brought it over to my house and we listened on the little phonograph record player.
Would you say you were kind of intrigued at that point?
No, I told you more. I said that I felt that I'd run into people who would understand me as a person who never thought he was understood at all. So no, it wasn't intrigued. It was more like everything changed from that point on.
And did that, when you saw them live for the first time, was it even a greater experience at that point? I mean, in terms of like being there in that moment?
Everything, it was interesting. They sound a little different than the record.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised that they were using such I was 16 or 17 when I was 16, and I was saying, they're using I expected them to be using more like cruddy, cheap guitars to get that sound, and I went, they're actually using Gretsch and Fender guitars. I go, wow, I didn't expect them to play instruments that were that straight,
They're sponsored. Well, maybe not, but they had nice instruments.
Well, that's not what I mean.
Okay.
I mean, it's not a matter of nice. It's a matter of No, it's not that I didn't think they could afford it.
Mm-hmm.
It was more that I expected those instruments to be made. Well, they did have, some of them maybe were made on like real cheap guitars, but anyway, they showed up, how can I put it? They were a little more professional in a certain way than I expected them to be. But I was just there transfixed, you know.
Yeah, I think it's, it's been sort of said over and over again. I mean, I guess the story goes, obviously Andy Warhol sort of discovered him and took them under his wing, but Lou always had the vision. And
well, they all did. In fact, Sterling Morrison said to me, the late Sterling Morrison, said, Jonathan, how can I put it? Everyone always plays up to Lou. They don't realize that nothing gets done in this band without my say-so. It was 4 of them.
Democratic?
Yeah. In fact, they would have arguments, and it was not just a backup band situation. It was not just one person with a vision. They all had a vision.
Yeah.
No one told Maureen Trucker how to play drums like that. She invented that style. No one told any of them how to do it. Like, they all had their own ways of doing things.
If you're just joining us, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Radio Valencia, and this is the Wax Crackle Pop Show. My name is Jim G, and we're doing a special tribute here. It's Lou Reed's birthday. He would have been 72, March 2nd. And, I asked Jonathan if he'd come down, and we play some songs. I think you're going to mostly hear some Velvet songs today, because this is what is closest to Jonathan's heart, and I think a lot of us out here, I mean, we all have many, many things to say about Lou, I'm sure. But today it's going to be just a celebration, and why not one more radio show saluting the late great Lou Reed? And let's hear some more music, and we'll be back with more conversation with Jonathan Richman. All right, we are back, and you're listening to the Wax Crackle Pop Show. I'm Jim G, Radio Valencia, and I'm here with the wonderful Jonathan Richman. Hello, Jonathan.
Hi again, Jim.
Thanks.
Hi, everybody, again.
Hello. Internet Radio Land. Jonathan fans, Lou fans. We're here to celebrate Lou, though. Today's Lou Reed's birthday, March 2nd. He would have been 72, the late, great Lou Reed. And Jonathan was gracious enough to come down and play some songs and talk a little bit. And the one thing I noticed, I just realized I forgot to announce back the first set we heard. So let me do that really quickly before going back to the second set, pedal back a bit. From the first set, we did listen to Waiting for the Man, which we talked a little bit about. Before that was the great White Light, White Heat. And before that was Velvet Underground by Jonathan Richman. And we started off with We're Gonna Have a Good Time Together by Lou and the Velvets, which was an outtake I'm sure many of you know, that appeared later on an 80s compilation called Another View, and Lou had re-recorded that as well for one of his solo efforts. I believe it was the Street Hassle LP, and maybe we'll be diving into some of that a bit later on in the show. But in this last set, we just got done hearing Some Kind of Love from the self-titled third album. What do you think about that one?
I heard that song live a bunch of times. For those of you just tuning in, me and Jim were talking earlier about the sound of the way they were live, and how I was talking about how different it was to hear a band in a room then. You heard all these tone colors. So I heard that on the album, and I was thinking, wow, when I heard it live, you would hear all these let me see, you would just hear these different, you'd hear a lot more low mid, you'd hear more Some Kind of Love, and the guitars were throbbing more. So when I heard it, on the record, I missed this kind of throb that you heard live, and these kind of tones that you couldn't. The thing about seeing the Velvet Underground is you'd see 4 people on the stage. Your eyes would go from one to the other and go, who's making that particular sound? You'd hear this harmonic tone in the background. And, no one was betraying it by their facial expression. They were all blandly just, playing there. But there's this 5th ghost tone coming from somewhere. So you'd hear all these strange ghost tones.
Was it like a collective timbre?
No, actually, I shouldn't say no. I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think it was just that they were all, they were really subtle musicians. Much more, they would play the major chord, but they also were fully capable of playing other passing notes, discord notes behind it. You would just have to probably know more about guitar than I knew back at that time to just see. But it was fascinating because you just watch, and they weren't even playing that loud. It wasn't distortion. Sometimes they'd be playing real clear, and you'd go, where's that other sound coming from? So, live, and it was something to do with live, because here for example, that record you were just playing, it isn't there. That strange ghost tone thing isn't there.
Interesting.
In this. So I think it's something to do with just the harmonics that happen when you have your amps just in a room and you're all melding the sounds together. Like the way recordings were done is often a very isolated thing where sounds of different amplifiers and guitars and things are kept separate. Live, that doesn't happen. So one of the reasons I like live sound better than most recording sounds anyway is because, especially with a group like the Velvet Underground, is because you would get all these blends. One of the reasons Jim asked me earlier what I wanted to play on this show, and my favorite things were like from White Heat and the Banana record, because those sounds were, everything blended in a lot. There wasn't much separation, especially White Heat. You can't tell what's happening, and I like that. And that's how they were live. There was this chaotic thing where you were hearing this rolling and tumbling wave of sound, and you didn't pick it out. It was just this big, colorful sound.
This might sound naive for me being not a musician, but someone who's read a lot about music. I'm just kind of stabbing in the wind here, but would you say most bands, they try to nail that sound in the recording studio, the live sound? They're trying to get there, but more cases than not, it's not delayed, or it's just different?
That's interesting. I really don't know how a lot of bands feel.
Okay.
I do know that the recording techniques used, they'll put microphones very close to instruments in the studio, which is not how your ears hear them. In my own records, I don't do that. My own records, I have the engineers put mics much further away than a lot of people do to make it more sound the way just music does in a room. So I actually can't tell what other bands are looking for, I'm not sure, usually.
All right. Well, it seems when you were describing that, too, it seems like a track like Sister Ray off White Light, White Heat.
That's a perfect example.
Right.
There's so much going on there. And what I love is, I like what didn't happen. In other words, I like the fact, live it was even better yet, because they lost a lot, as they said themselves on that recording of Sister Ray. There's a lot there that you can't hear. But live, you'd still hear that chaos, but you could also walk from one side you were in the audience, you could walk towards one side of the stage and the other. See, since no one mic'd their amps through the PA system back then, you didn't hear just one big. You could walk to the left side and you hear the piano player's sound. If Cale was playing organ, you'd walk towards him, and you'd hear more of him. Yeah. You'd walk towards Maureen Tucker. You'd hear what she was at. You'd hear you could hear the amplifiers you could walk where you wanted to, so you could hear all these colors and sounds, and you'd hear them all meshed together. Nothing like it is available to an audience that you never get hardly a chance to see that happen.
Wow. Tell us about Lou. I mean, remember the first time you met him?
Yeah. I was already told, that they said, ask your mother if you can come to the Boston Tea Party, the Velvet Underground, or come in. You ask your mom and dad, because I knew people. And Lou Reed was walking through Harvard Square the day before they were playing, this fall afternoon. Oh, no, it would have been spring, actually. I'm sorry. It was either fall or spring. I think I remember it being fall. But I'm wrong. It had to be spring.
Okay.
It had to be spring. And so they were about to play. It was been in April or so of 67, March or April of 67. And I was 16. And I recognized Lou Reed coming in maybe a brown corduroy sport coat, walking down the street with his guitar case. I said, excuse me, are you Lou Reed? He goes, yeah. I said, I've heard your record, and I love the sound you get. And he said, really? I said, yeah. For example, the way you use the guitars like they were drums. And he goes, wait a minute. Are you saying using the guitars, the rhythm guitar tracks as percussion instruments? I go, yeah. And he goes, well, that's what we do. And you heard that? I go, yeah, I could hear. He goes, oh. And so he told his people, he told the people that were putting on the show, who were people he knew, said, I met this 15-year-old precocious boy in the street, and later I ran into them and told them that I'd met Lou, and they said, were you that boy? I said, you mean the one who asked him the questions about music? And he said, yeah. I said, sure, that was me. He said, oh, so I was in.
Oh, man. You said the right thing.
Without trying.
Wow.
I mean, I could have said other right things, but they grasped that how seriously I took the music, and I did. It was life or death serious.
Yeah.
As it still is for me. If music isn't life or death serious, don't want to do it.
I mean, how long was it before? Well, did they know you were a musician first
I wasn't one yet. They made me a musician right around that same time. Actually, right around a few months before that, my dad had a beat-up guitar that he was a salesman, and he sold things as bingo prizes. And there was this $10 guitar from nowhere, which needed strings, and he said, you want it? And I said, yeah. So I'd already started listening to the Velvet Underground, so I just started I just started going, just making noises, and then just like that, and I would do that for hours and hours. And that's where I was at as far as musician. But what I meant them, as far as them using it as percussion, and so that's what I heard in them was like, marking time that way, as opposed, they were just going. And I heard that, which to me didn't seem that subtle a thing, but I just said that, to Lou Reed, oh, I like that. And, he said, oh, you noticed that? I said, yeah.
Yeah.
That we use, and there were other things. I noticed lots of stuff about their music, but that was the one that came up then.
Hey, if you're just joining us, we're talking to Jonathan Richman here on Wax Crackle Pop Radio Valencia, and Jonathan's sharing some stories about his experiences with Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground. It's Lou's birthday. He would have been 72. Jonathan is here, and as well as myself, and all of you listeners, paying our respects.
Yes, that's one of the reasons when Jim offered, one of the reasons I'm down here is just a chance to pay respects. Jim asked me before we were on the air, he said, well, can I ask you about how you heard about Lou Reed dying? And I go, yeah, some friends called me and we wanted to know what did I feel. I'll tell you all what I felt. More than sadness, what I felt was gratitude. Him and the whole band, I mean, I learned from them. They physically taught me how to play guitar. Sometimes I would be in the dressing room and Sterling Morrison would, show me how to play guitar. Lou Reed too, in little ways. I learned how to play. I couldn't copy all the things they did. But that's where I got, everything. What they would do is they would improvise. You would watch them in a rehearsal. They would improvise, and they would improvise during the show. They'd make stuff up. They wouldn't do songs. They would have several different tempos. They might do a song. So, to me, that's what music was supposed to be.
Sure.
And so,
never the same song twice.
Or even if it was the same song, it wouldn't be the same song.
Yeah.
So, to me, that's what I learned. I thought, yeah, this is the way this is supposed to be. They would improvise. They'd make up a song. They would work on it and sound check and do it that night. And sometimes they would just start a guitar riff going, and they would riff over it and make up words. Lou Reed would make up words, and they'd make up, and he'd give instructions to Mo Tucker, give me this kind of beat, give me that kind of beat. They'd make up stuff on the stage, too.
Wow. Did you mostly interact with those guys around a show, like either backstage or?
Yeah, occasionally I drove them around in my father's car or my mother's car. But yeah, I mean, no, I would go to some of the parties, you know, that they'd go to and things like that. But anyway, yeah, I mean, hanging around in the dressing room, there were a bunch of us in the Cambridge, Boston music scene. We used to hang around.
Mm-hmm.
So I was part of this crew.
Right.
That was this little 16-year-old mascot, sort of.
Nice. Yeah, was there such a thing as a Velvet Underground fan club? You probably weren't even interested. I don't know. Would you have been interested in something like that?
I don't know, but I don't remember there being one at that time. There probably was later.
Yeah.
I don't remember hearing about it at that time.
Yeah, probably wasn't, considering they weren't. I mean, were the shows? How busy were the shows?
They would help. They would play one night and they'd make an attendance record at the local rock club. Then the Grateful Dead would break it. Then Velvet Underground would come back next month. They would pack this club called the Boston Tea Party at the time.
Right.
Sometimes it was slow. Sometimes there'd be 30 or 40 people there one night. Sometimes there'd be 1,100, depending on the season and things.
Sure. All right. Well, let's get back to a little bit more music. Actually, before I forget again, I wanted to just repeat a little bit more. Maybe Jonathan's got a comment or two. Or,
okay.
Before Some Kind of Love in that last set.
Yes.
We heard Venus and Furs from the first record.
And in listening to it here in the studio with the radio public, I was still getting more stuff out of it. This time I still hear stuff that I never heard before. Oh, they went to that passing Discord and, you know, like, I don't know exactly the bass line, but they would go, and then they would go, I am tired, I am weary. Then they would go, yeah, I could sleep. Then there would be like, you know, sleep, like the viola would play, you know, like 1,000 years, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm still hearing stuff now, you know. I'm still discovering things that they would do, you know, like, you know, 1,000 dreams, there would, you know, just those little things of the viola, then, you know, just different passing, you know, like different passing discord notes that John Cale's doing on the viola. I'm still checking it out now and learning from this now, there's 40 years later.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm still hearing all this stuff. So I think there's great music for people to listen to now, because in some ways they were doing things that I still don't hear anyone else doing.
Right. There's like a dissonance quality.
Oh, yeah, well, John Cale was a student of that, you know. He studied with Lamont Young. The viola player of that band, John Cale, came to this country to play with Leonard Bernstein at Tanglewood. Did you know that?
I did know that, yeah.
Yeah, he was one of the 5 young viola players to watch in the world at that time, you know. So they understood dissonance and assonance and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and you still hear it. I'm still discovering stuff that I didn't grasp as a teenager that I listen to it now and go, oh.
That's great. That's the power of music. And one more thing, we started out that last set with the great I Heard Her Call My Name,
which is maybe my favorite fuzz solo. That and Ernie Isley on Who's That Lady by the Isley Brothers.
Nice.
And also Ernie Isley on Summer Breeze.
Wow.
And that solo of Lou Reed's on I Heard Her Call My Name, that fuzz solo, Jonathan's favorite fuzz solos.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah.
Jonathan's favorite fuzz solo, I Heard Her Call My Name. And that song, I mean, goes down. I mean, that whole record, White Light, White Heat, is obviously steep in legend. But, I mean, it was that feedback, these sudden bursts of just noise that just came across the speakers that just sort of revolutionized rock music.
Yeah, well, they were doing, you know.
I mean, there were other people doing it.
Pete Townsend was doing stuff, Jimi Hendrix,
Sure.
different folks doing it different ways. Their particular approach, just, let's put it this way, it resonated with me.
Right.
Like, when I would hear them do it, I would hear these tone colors. It just, the way they did it, just somehow, I could hear their music in Technicolor.
Yeah.
Just somehow, when they would do that stuff.
It's funny you say that, because to me, they seem like such a black and white band on the surface, but underneath it, There's a lot of colors. Right?
I hear it in colors. What they're doing, I hear some blacks. I also hear in their music a lot of these maroon sort of royal red velvet maroon colors. Some red brown. I hear a lot of midnight blue and midnight blue gray colors in their stuff. I hear all different kinds of things. A lot of bright colors too. There's a lot of bright colors in the middle of that too. If you listen, there's a lot of things going on in all kinds of different ranges.
Lots of shades of gray.
Well, I don't hear much gray in the early stuff myself.
Okay.
I hear a little of it in their later stuff more. In their third album, I hear a lot of gray colors. That one, The Velvet Underground. But in the early stuff, I hear some warm grays, warm gray browns. But I don't hear much pure gray. I actually hear a lot of, and I hear aquas in there, little bits. I hear little bits of yellow-green colors too. I hear all kinds of things in there. A lot of, in fact, in the middle of some of those really dark colors, I hear tree and autumn leaf colors too. So,
it's great. It's a great palette. All right, well, we're going to get back to some more music here. We're going to entering our second hour. We got another hour here left. We're going to spin some more Lou Velvet tunes. We'll get to some solo stuff perhaps here before the end of the hour. And Jonathan Richman is with us and share his thoughts, anecdotes, stories, observations.
And mostly respect, like Jim said. Mainly I feel gratitude. I'm honored that Jim asked me to come here. Even more than stories, I'm just plain grateful that I got to be there and hear that kind of music at that time.
Well said. And thank you for being here. So let's hear some live Velvet Underground here for a spin. We'll put a spin on things, and you're listening to Wax, Crackle, Pop. All right, we are back. Wax, Crackle, Pop. I'm Jim G. You're listening to Radio Valencia, and I'm here with Jonathan Richman.
Hi.
Hello. And we are playing some of our favorite Lou Reed songs today. And Jonathan's been kind enough to share some stories, some personal experiences with Lou and the Velvet Underground back in the day, as they say. And just to give you a quick reference of what we heard, that was Heroin, in case you didn't know. And who doesn't know Heroin? And that comes off the Velvet Underground Live at Lou Reed record, 1969. And before that, we heard What Goes On off the same double LP. And we were looking at the back of it, and the only information that we could see that where these shows were played was definitely in 1969, or so the label says, but also somewhere in Texas and San Francisco. So seems kind of fitting. And we were just talking about how, and this is something that people certainly know, but Lou just doesn't get enough credit as a guitar player.
No, certainly neither does Sterling Morrison, who was the rhythm guitar player in that band for all those years. Nah, I mean, not that credit is necessarily good, but boy, the way they just appreciated and understood sound, not just the parts they played, but just their understanding of sounds, the care they would take, the way they were dead serious getting their sounds together, sometimes with distortion effects, sometimes not, but just the way they were not just a blend in the different musical parts that the instruments were playing, but also with them especially, it was a blending of the different sounds they were making.
They complemented one another.
Or if they didn't, that was intentional too.
Right. Right. Yeah, they seem to be pretty dialed in. I mean, people have definitely brought it up with Lou, and I feel like Lou didn't really care either way.
About what?
About how he was thought of as a guitar player.
I don't know, but I sure think those guys were good.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Let me ask you about, we've talked a lot about Lou's influence on you with guitar playing and music and how they sort of took you in.
Yeah, Sterling Morrison too. He was the one who showed me.
Yeah.
He said, Jonathan, how are your fingers shaped? Can you play this? This particular bar chord, you know. To play that song we were listening to, What Goes On, a guitar player needs to be able to make the certain guitar players listening, you can probably make the bar chord where it's like you're making an E, but you also got to make the one where you use your ring finger, and then you make you hit 3 notes with your ring finger, the second, third, and fourth strings, and if your finger is shaped so that you can get that E string to also ring out, it's if you to get that sound, like, you know. That big D chord there is done that way. In case some of you guitar players are wondering, what are they doing? To a lot of people, it's a real simple move, but to other guitar players, since their fingers just don't happen to be shaped that way. So Sterling Morrison asked me, so Jonathan, can you make this curve with your ring finger? And it so happened I could, so I could get that. I just tell that as an example of, I learned physically to play guitar from them, you know.
Yeah. And you started on an acoustic, right?
Yeah, a $10 beat-up acoustic my father happened to have lying around.
Right. So when did you make the move to electric guitar?
I put a pickup on it. Put a pickup on one of them. I don't know, about a year later.
Yeah.
And
is that before you met them, or?
I don't know, somewhere in there.
Okay.
But my parents were really nice to me. They were very supportive. My father bought me he gave me that acoustic. He bought me a slightly more expensive one, a $29 one next time. And my first $59.95 electric guitar with a little $40 amplifier.
Wow.
And stuff like that.
Yeah.
And even bought me a $110 Epiphone guitar. So they bought me my first few guitars. They helped a lot.
Did you ever play with Lou and those guys?
Yeah, I opened a show for them once, and when they were showing me stuff backstage and things like that, there were just moments where we were both playing guitar at the same time, and they taught me how to play guitar.
Right.
More or less, as much as anyone else did. And I opened a show for them once before I had a band.
By yourself?
There was an opening act who didn't show up, and the promoter, who was a friend of ours out in Western Massachusetts. I drove out from New York with them, and the opening act didn't show up, and so they looked around the room, and I was there. And they just looked at me, and I said, sure. And can I borrow a guitar? So Lou Reed handed me his Gibson stereo guitar, and I did about 20 minutes, and Sterling Morrison said, well, Jonathan, that was quite remarkable.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah,
Do you remember what you played?
No. I probably played things that were like the beginning. I think I'd already made up Roadrunner by that point. So
Nice.
I probably, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I played probably a few more things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I already had made up the song Girlfriend by that point. Very likely played that.
Great.
Things like that.
What do they think of your songs? Any feedback?
Well, as you heard, quite remarkable.
But how about even later? Did you ever...
Later I ran into...
obviously, John
friends of
Cale...
mine brought... John Cale, I guess, thought enough of the stuff...
he took a big interest.
And to... He was... so he produced with us.
Right.
From what I heard, I ran into Lou Reed a few times, once in the early 90s, and he told me he was proud of me. I started to cry a little bit.
Wow.
So anyway, yeah.
That's great. That's fantastic. So
I got a little soft.
Yeah. Did you say the early 90s?
Yeah.
Okay.
In New York, I was the late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in there.
When was the last time you talked to Lou?
In person, that might have been it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We went out somewhere after the show and hung around.
Was he with Lori at that point?
Not yet.
Okay.
So it would have been late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in there. 91, something in there. I was playing the Lone Star Roadhouse, and Penn and Teller brought Lou along to see the show.
Wow.
So we all went out and hung around afterwards. Anyway, that was the last time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I talked to him on the phone maybe once or twice since then. And I would call them and announce, put their names at the door when we were playing. I don't know whether he ever showed up or not.
Right.
But anyway, that was the last time I think I saw him in the flesh.
Mm. What'd you think of his lyrics?
You know, I never understood him. I would just ask him, "What are you talking about? What's that? What is this stuff?" What I loved was his voice. That voice.
Yeah.
PI shoes and a big straw hat.
Yeah.
You know, like that sound. You know.
Yeah. I mean, it was always sort of a, what's the word? You know, there was just kind of minimum in tones with his voice.
This is beautiful baritone, I thought.
Yeah.
Anyway, just gorgeous singer.
It just seemed, well, I mean, I guess age may or may not have something to do with it, but as his career progressed, it just got a little bit more, I think it's deadpan is the word I'm thinking of, or something like it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's just his delivery.
Boy, what a singer.
Yeah. I only saw him once, and it was great. And I know he was...
Where'd you see him?
I saw him in Denver, Colorado.
Yeah.
In like 95 or 96.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
He opened up with Sweet Jane and the most blistering amount of feedback. And it was incredible.
Yeah, yeah. He could play guitar all right. Like, you know.
Right.
Yeah, no one... Those fuzz solos, oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you're just joining us, Jonathan Richman is here, Wax Crackle Pop on Radio Valencia, and we got a little bit of time left. We're going to play another couple of songs here and then come back and bid goodnight, but I just want to, you know, let y'all know I'm very, very honored to have Jonathan here to dedicate his time and just to tell a few stories and play some of our favorite songs about Lou. It's Lou Reed's birthday, March 2nd. He would have been 72, so let's get a Foggy Notion, and then we'll come on back in a little bit. All right, we are back, and that was Sweet Jane. Of course it was, off the loaded LP, Velvet Underground. And we're here with Mr. Jonathan Richman. Jonathan?
Yeah, I asked Jim to play that one, because did you hear folks listening, that guitar part at the very beginning, to Jim it sounded like harps almost. That was Sterling Morrison playing 5 guitar tracks. There he was using his Gibson guitar through a Fender Dual Showman, and got that sound. And again, folks listening to this stuff years later, I still discover new things in it. Yeah, they recorded that in the spring of 1970.
You were at that recording session?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they let me hang around. Ahmet Ernigan walked in the booth there. You know, they were doing it for Atlantic. And,
where was it recorded? In New York?
Yeah. Midtown somewhere.
Right. And were you living down there at the time?
I was, yeah. I moved to New York when I was 18 to be near them and to be near that Andy Warhol art scene, actually. And
Sure.
so I was working as a messenger here. You know, a busboy there, just different things. You know, worked down on Wall Street as a foot messenger. Worked for Esquire magazine, and also as a messenger delivering, you know, pamphlets from one photographer. You know, had work that had to be, you know, express back from uptown. They needed it in their office by 3 p.m. You know, I was one of the gopher boys there.
Right.
And that's what I did, you know, to stay at the hotel that I paid $25 a month, $25 a week to stay at.
Wow.
And anyway, yeah, so I invited me to hang around there when they were recording that.
So, I mean, was there a lot of fun being had at those sessions between the band or between friends? Or was it all serious
My
work?
memory is it was very calm. I can still see, for example, Sterling Morrison doing guitar, sitting it there. I can, in my mind's eye, I can see it now. Very calm, actually. Not fun, not fun, not depressed, just sort of neutral. See, Maureen Tucker was not with them at that time.
She was pregnant, right?
I don't know the exact details. I guess, I forget what.
Yeah.
The reason, whatever it was. So they had to use another drummer. So there was a sort of a calm feeling, not exactly a sorrow feeling, but just sort of a neutral, calm feeling, I remember.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was Doug Yule's brother they got in.
Yeah, Billy.
Right. how about Foggy Notion? We heard that to start off that last little set. Know that you've done that one with the Modern Lovers, your former band. You still, does that song mean anything to
Foggy
you?
Notion was one of my favorite things. I used to hear them do it live a lot. Let me see. I know what I should say. That's an example of a song that didn't get recorded the way it sounded live. Earlier in the show, when we were talking about microphone placement and how it really affects what something sounds like. You can hear a live record by a group, and a lot of times that's not what it sounded like in the room at all. In the cases of some of these Velvet Underground recordings, that happened. Sometimes they were being too technical. They put the mics too close to get the sound too perfect. No, that's not how your ear hears. Your
Right.
ear hears a big bunch of mixed sounds, and it mixes it itself. So if you try and separate them too much, a lot of times you just don't get all the little ghost tones that are really in the music. So there's a certain sterile thing when you hear a lot of live records that you shouldn't hear. It should be much more mixed. It should be much more this weird salad. It should be much more this strange, different shifting colors of sounds, especially back in those days before they mic'd everything through the PA system.
Right.
So when I hear the recorded versions of Foggy Notion, okay, folks, listen to those, but think more color. Think more dark, mid-range tones and things like that. And more strange, unidentifiable sounds.
Do you think Lou was happy with the product, like after it was done and packaged and out in the world?
I don't know.
Yeah. You ever
I
talk
wouldn't have
about
asked.
Right.
I never asked about product. I would.
But just I meant like when I meant product, I mean like the final mix.
Yeah,
of us.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Truth is, I just plain don't remember.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you still listen to Lou Velvet? I mean, we're obviously doing it today. I mean, is it something you like to?
Yeah, like I was telling your audience, Jim. Like when I hear that stuff, I'm still discovering different things in it now that I never even heard then.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, if you're just tuning in, it's the Wax Crackle Pop Show. I'm Jim G on Radio Valencia, and Jonathan Richman is here, and we are sharing stories, learning. Jonathan is still learning.
Yeah, I'm still learning from this stuff.
Student here of the great late Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground.
And again, like that thing we played, I played that to highlight for folks Sterling Morrison. There were two guitars in that band, and in fact, Maureen Tucker occasionally could play. Every once in a while, she'd shift and she'd play bass on the stage.
Right.
They all did. Sometimes Sterling Morrison would play bass.
Right.
They were quite the band.
Yeah, they were quite the band, to say the very least. Well, Jonathan, I really, really can't thank you enough for coming down and being on the show today.
Yeah, once is enough.
All right, so this is it, huh?
Yeah, you're welcome. Period.
All right. I'm still going to buy a coffee after this. So,
Hey, you develop a taste for coffee fast, then.
Whatever you want to drink.
Don't got much time.
He gets a drink. That's the transaction here, folks. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. We're going to leave you now with one more song here. You want to say anything about Sister Ray, Jonathan?
Yeah, that had to be heard live to be appreciated. The Jim was mentioning some of their cut-off endings where they would do, they'd all be playing. They would improvise, see, so they would didn't have a set ending, so they would just be, and then Lou Reed would just hold his guitar up, hold the neck up, and that would be the signal, he would just cut it, he would just make the neck go, and so they'd stop short. The band didn't know where they were going to stop, the audience didn't know they were going to stop, but the story about Sister Ray is an example of when he would do that, and the band will all of a sudden, and then the band was all of a sudden, the audience would be silent. Sometimes you could count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then they'd start to applaud real wild. Why? Because it was like they were hypnotized. Because they would be playing like these riffs for 17 minutes or 18 or 20. And they'd be going on like that, and all of a sudden, and the audience would sort of like almost fall forward. I saw it several times. You could count to 5 of just silence. So the thing about it live was, what do I think about Sister Ray? I think it was hypnotic. That's what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's close on out with some Sister Ray. And Jonathan, once again, thank you very much.
I told you once was enough. I only got one you're welcome in me.
How about one more time for a happy birthday to Lou Reed? Thank you, Lou Reed.